Is up, everybody? Welcome back, finally, to the Quick-O-Flicks series, which I haven't done one of these in 4 months, according to YouTube. And shorter or simpler videos. This is almost going to be borderline vlog, but it's not going to be about personal stuff. There's a couple of things I want to talk about before 2015 draws to a close, and also I want to start making up for this month being unduly dominated, or whatever word you want to use for it, by videos about my recent move to the Geek House. So I want to try and make up for that somewhat before the year draws to a close. So you might see me really pumping out videos over the next couple of days talking about various gaming and tech-related topics. I also have the great sift going right now where I'm sifting through the stuff from the move and getting rid of stuff in large quantities. I'll even take a trip out to a recycling area and recycle some old electronics as well. There's a recycle place nearby that I can go out to with some old electronics that I no longer want. So that'll be later in the week once the weather gets a little better, because we did have a little taste of winter this week here in Connecticut and southern New England. So I want to revisit the topic of retro gaming ruining ripoff resellers. And that's why this is called Retro Gaming Ruining Ripoff Resellers Redux. The rather alliterative term that I have for people that spike the prices of old video games. Basically, as anybody will tell you, especially people that have entire channels devoted to this stuff, there's been a problem in recent years where people jump all over the possibility of calling something vintage in terms of video games and stuff like that. And prices have actually been going up for older systems. Now, people with a piece of the pie, so to speak, with their hand in the pie that may sell some things will throw out the excuse of supply and demand. But the unfortunate truth about the whole supply and demand reference is that if these really were old systems, if these games and systems were really just old systems that were getting harder and harder to find, the price should have been steadily rising over the years, but that's not the pattern. The price actually, was blue, and then suddenly now it's finally starting to become rare or vintage or whatever. Now, I personally attribute this problem to a lot of things that are very easily nameable. One of them is that there are reality shows like American Pickers or something, and you know how people are. They like to think that everything they see on TV is factual and not a form of entertainment. So there's people that take things on, even all these years after people said, don't believe everything you see on TV, there's people that still believe everything they see on TV. And they'll see these produced reality shows, however much sense that makes. They'll see these reality shows about people going into some basement or something like that, and oh, look at this, I can sell it for a bunch of money. And now, of course, that has extended to old video games as well as all kinds of other stuff as well. Unfortunately, people watch those shows, it gets to their head, they think they can do that, and they start adding artificial demand or artificial price increases to the prices for older video games, systems, etc., and things along those lines. There's also the YouTube effect. The angry video game nerd and all these big gaming YouTubers that do all of their videos in front of a big shelf full of video games that they probably never ever play, which is a form of hoarding, which lowers the supply, which increases the price, and people are like, I want to be that guy too! I want to be taken seriously as a gamer. I want to have all kinds of gaming posters behind me and a big shelf of video games from years and years ago to show that I have gaming street cred. So they go out, they start essentially buying and hoarding, and that drives the prices up too. So a lot of this is not simple supply and demand. It's that supply and demand has been modified by human stupidity in this case. Much in the same manner as people can get malicious and price gouge and stuff along those lines. So eBay as well has unfortunately caused problems because people think an eBay price is a gold standard for what they can sell something at, except the top 20% of an eBay price is administrative fees. So you should really, if you want to go by eBay, take the eBay price and chop it 20%. Now there's websites like VG Price Charts that do that with their prices for loose carts, complete in box, things along those lines. So there's some websites that actually factor out that top 20% from eBay to give a more realistic number. So ultimately, retro gaming ruining ripoff resellers, it is a problem, but you have to put things in perspective as well. Now, I recently visited one such retro gaming ruining ripoff reseller who at their worst was caught with a $25 loose cart of Super Mario Brothers 3 a couple of years ago. Oops! Yeah, I know. But the thing with any game that's on the eShop or Virtual Console is if you just want to play the game, you can download it now. Assuming you're not just emulating it with ZSNES or something to begin with, if you want to get legit emulation, so to speak, you can go to the Nintendo eShop and download it for like $10 or something like that, a lot of these games. And so the only people that would really want the real cartridges would be people that want the real cartridges, maybe collectors or something, so things go up. Although I think a major problem with so-called collectors' prices for video games is the simple fact that a lot of us in the Nintendo and Super Nintendo generation didn't keep the boxes. So now you've got people out there trying to say that something's a collector's item when it doesn't have a box. So there's no way to differentiate people like myself who might still buy an old Super Nintendo game that I never got to play as a kid because I want to play it, and it's not available on any kind of emulated platform except the stuff that's the gray area, so to speak. So there's no way of differentiating people like me from the collectors that are actually collecting old video games like their baseball cards or something. So that causes a problem. What you need to do, though, is you need to put things in perspective. And so let's review my latest visit. I am currently undergoing what I call the Great Sift, where I go through every single thing that I have and decide, do I really want to keep this or not? And then there's actually one of these Retrogaming ruining Ripoff Resellers very close, and I'm going to compare what they offer versus GameStop. I'm going to even make a trip to GameStop if I really want to, if they're competitive or something. I have reason to believe that the local resellers, with their storefront and everything, and their overhead costs and their staff and things along those lines, I have reason to believe that the local place is in trouble because of GameStop re-entering the retro scene, but I want to help them out because they're the underdog and stuff along those lines, so I think I'm going to do that. So, the current king of independent resellers is East Starland in Virginia, as far as I know, who gives 70% of store credit value as cash if you get a balance of $20 or more in store credit. So theoretically, if I wanted to cash out my collection, I would put it all in boxes, send it to East Starland, they add it up, and then when my balance got above $20, cash out for 70% of store credit value. These local folks, not even close. They do 50% as store credit, 50% of what they'd sell it for as store credit, and then 25% as cash. So they're not even close to being competitive. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to take games that I'm not going to be playing anymore, systems that I'm not going to be playing anymore, and trade them for stuff that I will be getting. And if I spend at least $5, if I have a trade value that's $5 below what I replace it with, spend $5 each visit, there's a stamp. At 10 stamps I get 20% off something. So I'll get 20% off of something that I can buy for real and drop 20% or something along those lines. It's going to be a very awkward process, though, because I can't cash out. So they need to have stuff that I want in that store, and that's really what's going to hit the brakes on a lot of this. I think I'm probably going to be able to get rid of a couple of games and a couple of consoles at the most. But in terms of trying to shrink things down in order to go mostly PC only, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, not with these folks, because I don't think they have the inventory for it versus Lukey Games, JJ Games, East Starland, or even GameStop. Although I'm not really too quick to trust GameStop, because so far it sounds like they're total idiots when it comes to retro, with some of the carts with the wrong chips inside that people are getting, and then reproduction carts and other shenanigans going on where people buy something, a retro game from GameStop. So I probably would sell more than I'd buy. Depends on what they offer. So let's go over my latest trip. My latest trip, actually, I checked the prices afterwards, and I don't think I did too bad with these folks. So they are trying to be competitive. They might be trying to be competitive, though, to their detriment. When I say competitive, I mean that the prices for these games are in line with what's on VG price charts, which filters out 20% for online transactions because of administrative fees and things like that on eBay. So, first thing I did was I gave up a few old Final Fantasy DS. I think it was Final Fantasy DS. There were two DS games that I got rid of. Mario Kart DS, which I will never play again because Mario Kart Wii U absolutely supersedes that. and also Final Fantasy IV DS, because I now have the Final Fantasy IV version on Steam, so I can put it on a big screen or play it even on my netbook for portables, so no need to play it on the DS anymore with its itty-bitty 2-inch screen. I mostly use my last remaining DS Lite as an alarm clock anyways. I don't really play much for games on it. I might just get rid of my entire DS collection. As I go to all the trouble to have this AV setup. I don't want to be playing on a dopey little screen with headphones. The wild card here is the Game Boy Advance. I have the Super Retro Advance for the Super Retro Trio, and it would also work, I believe, in a Super Nintendo as well if I just had a Super Nintendo, so I could play that. Things along those lines. So here's what I got last go-around. Crazy Taxi! The PS2 port from right after the PS... This is the greatest hits version, of course. Complete, although previously owned by a smoker. I should probably spray some Ozium on this case. Absolutely complete, with the manual in good condition, for $4, which is pretty much right in line with what was on the charts to begin with for complete prices. So, good job for the local folks on this, although I'm going to Ozium the crap out of it because it definitely smells like cigarettes. I also picked up Epic Mickey for the Wii. I heard a lot of good things about the Epic Mickey series, and although my Wii U currently isn't hooked up, I'll probably eventually hook it back up and maybe play some of these games and stuff like that. But yeah, this was $4 as well, right in line with what's on the price charts for the game to be complete. And it is actually complete. I picked the one where the case is in the best condition, has the manual and everything, good to go. Haven't fired it up yet, but they do have a return policy, and I'm keeping the sticker on as well until I verify that the game works so they can know that it was in their inventory. Now, where I got socked the most, and this is weird for these folks, because usually Retro is competitively priced. The last several times I've been there, their Retro was competitively priced, but they tried to make more money off of the newer systems like PS2 and GameCube. This time around it was backwards. My final game, a cartridge game, was Little Nemo the Dream Master on NES, reacquiring this old favorite of mine from when I was a kid. This cartridge, except for a little ding on the label, is in incredible condition. It's got gloss to it and everything. Except for the little whatever happened to that label there, this could pass as the actual cart that I had as a kid that my folks gave away when I was in college. Unfortunately, I was several dollars above the loose cart price and got this one for $10. So this was the biggest rip, but old NES game, great condition, things like that. Plus, they are helping me get rid of stuff that I am not playing at the same time. So I'm willing to forgive a few misgivings with the prices and things like that. But I'll just do more videos as I continue swapping more merchandise, so to speak, to see how competitive their prices are. But anyways, even though I got technically ripped off on this game for $10, there is something worth noting with all of this old software. Now, if you hop on Steam, you can find some really old games from like the PlayStation 2 era. I recently purchased Psychonauts for PC. And I'll probably sell off my PlayStation 2 version now that I can play it in 1080p 60 on the big screen instead of having to look at, the Emotion engine, sadly, on PlayStation 2 doesn't look very good on today's TVs. There are some games like Gran Turismo 4 that do 1080i, but even that doesn't look as good as Gran Turismo 5. So I really don't anticipate being able, if I get something on Steam, if I get something on Steam, then it will probably most likely replace the console versions, with a few exceptions. For example, Crazy Taxi is a game that is not worth buying on Steam. The graphics are going to look lousy, because this is a turn-of-the-millennium game to begin with that was originally on Dreamcast and arcade, and the graphics match that. And so yeah, you can get 1080p 60 on a game from the turn of the millennium. Do you really want that? But the biggest insult is anybody like myself who saw the Dreamcast version of this game or the arcade version of the game remembers one thing and one thing only. Hi-yi-yi-yi-yi! The Offspring music! That is missing from the Steam version because of licensing issues. Now, there are hacks and stuff like that where people like buy the music from the original game and bring it back in via something that mods their game files for their Steam install. But why should I go to all that trouble when I can just pay a couple bucks for a PS2 version of it? And in terms of the graphics looking terrible, yeah, so what? play this on an older console. Whoop-de-doo. Yeah, so what? It's a game from the turn of the millennium. It's not going to look like Skyrim or anything, even though Skyrim's nearly a 5-year-old game. So, couple of bucks, you get this, yeah, it's cheaper on Steam, but there's no Offspring music, which as far as I'm concerned, ruins the experience because it feels like a different game compared to the original version that was the big hit in the arcades and on the Dreamcast until it was ported over to the PS2 after the PS2 crushed the Dreamcast, unfortunately. So, it's, but let's think about this little ripoff, allegedly, right here, for 10 bucks. Is this platformer still worth $10? I mean, you are buying a physical copy of a piece of software. Could you buy a platforming game for $10 nowadays? Yes, you could. Does this game hold up? Yes. It has a fair amount of difficulty to it, although it takes great liberties with the source material. I think it's based more upon the comic strip than the Adventures in Slumberland movie. I think I saw it on Netflix once, and it was nothing like the game, and I was kind of surprised. So, it's a pretty decent platformer, a little on the difficult side. I used to Game Genie the heck out of this game. I put on Infinite Life, and then I just run around the Flower Garden or the Night Sea stage, and I'd run around the Flower Garden or Night Sea stages and just mess around in the zone because I liked how atmospheric the relaxing ocean at night was, or the spring flower garden was, and things like that. So I would actually Game Genie the heck out of this game, and I also messed around with my own codes that screwed up the music or sent me to levels that didn't exist, so to speak. It was really fun messing with the Game Genie on that game. But when you consider these older games, do they still hold up? And if they do, you're basically just discriminating against the thing because you think old equals bad or old equals cheap. But if this can still create a decent amount of enjoyment, if a game that costs $10 for an old NES cart can still keep you occupied, even though it's retro, then why not? So, to put things in perspective, by the way, I had this new as a kid for $50. This was a $50 cartridge that I had to buy complete. So, in the case of a lot of these games, there has been a drop in price from when it was new. It's just that Steam, with the digital downloads and Steam sales and stuff, has just spoiled us rotten so much with these fire sale prices. However, with Steam, you're getting potentially some DRM. You don't have any physical stuff, and you basically just get an installation with a Steam purchase. And of course, we just had that nonsense at Christmas where there was the security issues and people seeing each other's accounts and stuff like that, and Valve hasn't been good on the communication for that kind of stuff. So there is a catch to some of this digital distribution stuff. So anyways, I do like Steam and GOG, but I do think that $10 is a reasonable price for a physical piece of software like this. So, something to think about. You'll hear, say, some of these folks like the Craigslist Game Finds guys talk about, oh, eBay prices. Yeah, if it's an eBay price, it's a rip, but if you do VG price charge or something, you can watch out, make sure you don't pay more than absolutely necessary. But even if you do pay an eBay price, suppose I paid $15. Whoops, didn't hit the button enough. Even if I did pay $15 for this cart, would it still be worth it? Of course. It's a moderately decent platformer. And the same thing with some of the other retro games as well. If I paid $15 for this game, would it still be worth it? Yeah. This is a classic arcade game from the turn of the millennium. It's still playable. It just looks lousy because it's an old game from 15 years ago. That's about it. The only thing this thing does not have going for it is the graphics. And what do people always say nowadays? Graphics don't make the game. Yeah, well, you better put your money where your mouth is, because if graphics don't make the game, it shouldn't be a problem to still pay a decent price for this one. Likewise with Epic Mickey, but I haven't tried this one yet. So, that's something worth noting. Yeah, there will be rip-off artists at the second-hand places. Yes, there will be people at flea markets with shady deals in the back of their truck or whatever, but there'd be these people would be there even if it wasn't video games, because there are people out there that try to scam others. So, I think what's going on with this retro gaming ruining rip-off resellers, it's a thing, but it's not something that's worth blowing out of proportion. I suspect there may be a part of the business model of this local reseller shop around here that takes advantage of what the locals don't know about the stuff that I dig around on the internet. I'm sure that if the owner hears me talking with her shop staff through the wall, she probably cringes from time to time. Although she is a big cat person, and she's got some cats running around the place that love the attention, so, you know, they kind of help with the atmosphere as long as you're not allergic to them. They've got this one cat that she loves to just run around and just, meow at you, and you have to pet the darn thing and try and get it to leave you alone while you're looking at the shelves. But it is a small business, nice little friendly family place, and they do keep the store in very good condition. It looks nice. It does remind me of walking through a Blockbuster back in the day. Oh, which of these games do I want? Except it's purchasing instead of renting. So I think the biggest problem with me getting rid of some old stuff that I'm not going to be playing anymore to these folks, I think the single biggest problem that I'm going to have with these people is that Christmas is over. So I just missed their peak season. So probably the big thing that the owner is going to cringe about is, why couldn't he have been in here last week when we were still trying to sell for Christmas? Everything, the sales just died. It's New Year's now. Oh, man. So major apologies to her if by wild chance she ever watches this video. Unfortunately, the move up here did not go the way I would have liked it to have gone, and it took a little longer than it should have. So I'm going to try and make the best of it, and it will be straight up trades though. I'm not going to try and cash out because the cash out prices are absolutely not competitive. So I'm just going to do trade for trade, get a quote for the store credit, find something I want that's within a couple dollars of that, and pay the difference. Simple. Just got to make sure it's $5 to get a stamp on the card. So, forgot that yesterday. Oops. I'm sure they were enjoying that. That's the only break they're going to get. Oh man, I'm so going to get trade banned from these folks. But I do have a lot of stuff that I don't play anymore, so I'm sure they could find somebody that actually wants it, like my old fat PS2, and my GameCube, unfortunately, is one of the models that does not have component support, so it's a doorstop at this point. Still works. The catch that I have with the GameCube is that I'd have to, if I want any decent trade value, because they sell GameCubes for $50. Wow! They can find someone who will pay $50 for a GameCube? I mean, I see them for $20 to $30 online. So, okay, well, that's their business. It's worth whatever someone will pay for it. Well, anyways, I could probably get 25 in credit if I include the controller, which means the cheapest GameCube controller that isn't third party is about $20 from JJ's for the original purplish one. So, yeah. Well, I'm not playing GameCube anytime soon, so I'll just pay the $20 when I want to get back into GameCube gaming. Or maybe get rid of my old collection or something like that. Or pick some GameCube games that I don't want to play anymore and see if I can get a control something. Yeah. I do want to shrink things down here, though. I want to declutter, because I've experienced life without as much clutter, and I enjoyed it more than when everything finally got up here and I have all this clutter to sift through. There'll be electronics getting recycled. There'll be systems being sold. And there's a computer shop that I want to say hello to that I could bring some old hardware to in case they get some of those people that are like, oh, the furnace just turned off, pardon the clanking. So, it must be about 70 degrees in here now. Indeed. Yep. Yeah, it's where it's supposed to be temperature-wise. So, that's going to be one of the problems at record. Well, not the radio style series, but for these more unofficial stuff you might hear it. But so, yeah, Retrogaming ruining Ripoff Resellers. The folks who do YouTube videos about this stuff got me all wound up on that stuff last year, but when you really stop and think about it, I'd say these prices are fair. I mean, considering what these games originally cost, and the fact that it's $4 here, yeah, the Steam version I think is like $3 or $2, but you get the actual Offspring music that came with this game originally with the older version of it. So, it's something to think about, definitely. So that's my latest Retrogaming ruining Ripoff Reseller Redux rant whatever. I'm going to reserve that term from this point forward for shady people at flea markets that like to be like, rare vintage video game, I'm charging eBay++ for it. There'll always be those kinds of people out there, but innocent until proven guilty, folks. Check prices first when you go to like reseller shops. Because these folks try to compete with the internet. That might be why they're not taking any cash trades right now, because they're probably strapped because of it. Strapped for cash, that is. Not like there's somebody with a shotgun, like, oh, I didn't make enough money this Christmas. Shh. Ah! Oh, man. I'm not going to quit my day job. Believe me, I'm not going to quit my day job anytime soon. Enough with the bad jokes! So, yeah. Yeah! Anyways. Yes. So, yeah, the term still exists. It's still an issue. But don't be so quick. Make sure people are actually gouging before you go assuming, oh, it's a reseller. They must be gouging because that's the thing to do nowadays. You might be surprised. If you put the prices in perspective, couple of bucks, whoop-de-doo, would be similar on Steam, but it wouldn't have the original music. You know, really stop and think, are you really getting slammed if you buy an old PlayStation 2 game for $5? Something to think about. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay, signing off. Thanks for stopping by.